Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great day. It's a beautiful day here in Colorado. I'm very excited to be having a dear friend of mine, Katie Fulton, come on with us. Let me see if I can get her on here. Let's see. There we go. We'll see. Hi, Katie. I can see you trying to access. Let's see. Hopefully this will work. Yay! Hello.
Oh, hey.
It's so good to see you. I miss you.
Good to see you. I miss you.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out how to see each other sometime.
No, we'll just have to go on Instagram Live from time to time so we can see each other.
Oh my goodness, that's sad. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Katie, for doing this. As you can see, Katie is now a high school English teacher, and she's right there in her classroom. So, let's see, I'll tell you guys a little bit about Katie. So Katie and I got to be good friends because we were both stationed at Laughlin Air Force Base, showed up about the same time. And I met Katie online because we both had, well, my kids are the same age as her older kids. And we connected with each other online. And then Katie was so gracious to have me over for coffee. And we really became really good friends very quickly. Katie was my running partner in addition to a lot of other things that she did. But during those 2 years, Katie was, she was parenting 4 children. She was also homeschooling, probably like 2.5 of those. And she was very involved on base, serving as a key spouse, and also super involved serving in her church. And so Katie had seen some of the things I've been posting about some of the lies that military wives can believe. And Katie said one of the things that she struggled with was having her significance or identity defined by being very involved because Katie is making a difference wherever she is. But you know, right now she's in a different season of life where she is back in the classroom. And I know Katie actually taught my kids in homeschool co-op, and they loved her. Katie was the fun, engaging teacher, and I was just the hard teacher. But I know she's really making a difference there. And so, yeah, just very excited that Katie would come on and just chat with me about this. I feel like there's probably a lot of other military spouses out there that are struggling with significance and just placing their identity. So, Katie, so I mentioned that during our time in Del Rio, you were very involved in serving the military community, and honestly, you are making a huge difference there. You weren't working outside of the home. So did you struggle with during that time with your sense of worth being you know, your capacity in serving the military?
So, yeah, I think so. Going back even before that, our first assignment, my husband and I's first assignment together was at Dyess Air Force Base. And there, that's where I learned about the Key Spouse community and the Key Spouse program and became incredibly involved, became a lead Key Spouse, was really helping out with socials and planning Christmas parties and exchanges and really filling my time.
Right.
I kind of came, and that was kind of like, even going back to high school, like that's kind of where I found a lot of my worth was in my productivity. Okay. So if I'm being productive, then that must mean it's worthwhile. Okay. Like, am I between, you know, my worth being in my productivity and also being a chronic people pleaser. And so those two together became this dynamite stick of when I entered into the military world. I worked outside the home for a little bit, and then I became pregnant with my third child, my second son. And my husband and I decided it would be a good plan because I wasn't teaching, but I was working in a different avenue. And I was just going to be happier and it was going to be better for our family if I stayed home. And when I came home, then I started worrying about my worth as a wife and as a mother, as a contributing member to society, kind of looking outward
Right.
of where is my worth? What do other people think about me? How am I making a difference? But more of a how am I making a difference on almost like a worldly
Right.
impact versus a gospel impact. And
Sure.
so it started then. And then when I got to Laughlin, trying to keep my bases straight, got to Laughlin and I still wasn't working outside the home, but now I wasn't working outside the home and I was homeschooling my kids. So in that way, I could kind of justify like, well, I'm working, but I'm working at home. So I'm not going to um, plus I was kind of burnt out because I had given so much to the squadron and it was wonderful and great time spent, but I was ready for a break. So I kept saying like that was a season and that's not my season. So I'm like my season right now is going to be homeschooling and that's where I'm going to pour all my energy into. And then there were needs. And I saw on Facebook and on the groups, and we really need help with this. And we really need, and I am the person in church, in school, and anywhere. If you're like, we really need help, my husband is looking at me going, don't do it. Don't do it. And my hand just slowly going, I'll do it. And so I eventually kind of got, I wouldn't even say I got pulled into it. I just saw that there was a need. So I was like, justified time management. Like, I have time. Like, we're done with school about this time. Like, it doesn't take that much time.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that it took that much time, but again, now I was like, well, I wasn't worried about my worth as a mother or a wife or a contributing member. It was more like, as a military spouse, what was my worth?
Yeah. So
And so
maybe
I
you
was like,
were worried about what other people were thinking of you.
absolutely. Like, um, and then this weird lie that I think comes from this ancient myth of military spouses. If your wife is involved or your spouse is really involved and your spouse is really well liked, like maybe that could help your
Uh,
active
I
duty
don't
member's career.
think it does that
It
anymore.
doesn't. And but it's somewhere that lie was fed.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this could help. Like it didn't. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it hurt anything, hopefully, but it didn't
Yeah.
help anything either. And I think it was, between conversations with you. I know we talked a lot about like different seasons as our kids were growing up. Our kids, my oldest two and your two are very close in age. Like they're all like right at about 6 or 8 months
Right.
apart from each other. And so it was nice to have somebody else who was in that same season of parenting, but we could talk about different seasons of parenting babies and then toddlers and then young school age. And now we had middle schoolers and high schoolers and we survived. Hey, we survived. And that was some tough
Well, and
times.
you were doing that in babies and toddlers.
And babies and toddlers.
I at least
And
just had teens.
I finally came to a point where I realized it's okay to have seasons.
Yeah.
And seasons are not like when those seasons end, it's okay to say goodbye to them
Yeah. And move on.
and move on to what the next season is, because God cannot, just like different parts of nature. I'm not a green thumb person, so I'm going to say this wrong, but the Lord works in us in certain ways in certain seasons.
Yeah.
Just like certain plants and flowers are going to bloom and going to blossom during specific seasons. They can't do that in the winter or
Right.
in the summer. It's for a specific time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started coming to that realization and figuring out what that meant and how it looked to leave something behind and be okay with
Right.
it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks. That's such good wisdom, Katie. So I know now you're in a different
Yeah.
season. Um, your teens, just like mine, are now
Mhm.
adults-ish.
Yeah.
No, I shouldn't say that. They're adults.
They're adulting.
Yes, they're adulting, and I think they're adulting well. But now you're back in the classroom, which I know is something that God has really gifted you for. So how have you struggled kind of readjusting your identity and your sense of self-worth now that you're not doing all the things at the squadron and with the fundraisers and all the things. And I think as a military spouse, we can struggle with our identity in different ways throughout their journey because we are somewhat following in their shadow a bit, as they adjust and the moves and all of that. And so I feel like this redefining our worth has to happen not just once. I think it's a continual process. So how have you kind of adjusted now that you are working?
Um, that's a great question because it definitely, like I said, I've stayed at home. There was a time where like I had kids in school, but I was staying at home without, it was during my pregnancy, but there was no kids at home with me and they were at school. And now I have, a toddler, two school age kids and two adult kids,
Yes.
and I'm working full time.
Oh yeah, we
And
should
that
have
has,
mentioned Katie adopted a baby.
oh,
Yeah,
yes,
so now she has 5 children. So she's
yes,
doing baby, toddler, teens all over again with a new
all
stage.
over again. Because we decided we weren't busy enough. Um, but so the new, I guess, honestly, this time around, it hasn't been a struggle because I kind of have watched past mistakes
Okay.
or past struggles. Not, I don't want to call them mistakes, but like struggles of being scared of my feeling almost like I'm drowning, not knowing who I am. And I would say probably, let's see, Sadie just turned 10. So probably when she was about 3 years old, so 5 to 7 years ago, I had this realization that we tell couples constantly, like, hey, your kids are going to grow up and move out, and you two are stuck with each other.
Yes,
Don't forget to date. Don't forget to
absolutely.
date each other. Don't forget to invest in each other.
Yeah.
And it was really when I was still homeschooling, the tail end of my time in Del Rio, Texas, I realized we don't do that a lot with moms. At
Yeah.
some point, your kids are going to leave the house. Like if we've done our job right, they're going to adult and
Absolutely.
be independent.
Yeah, and I think that can be a really hard adjustment for some people. It wasn't for me because now I'm super involved in ministry, but I think it could have been.
Yeah. And it hasn't been so much for me right now because I still have little ones at home, right?
Yeah.
Like my husband and I are not empty nesting by any means. In fact, our nest is fuller
Yeah.
than
Right.
it could have been. And this idea that I need to make sure that I'm having ways to pour into myself and know who I am
Hmm.
in Christ as like in Christ alone, but like as an
Right.
individual, who I am in
Hmm.
Christ, not who I am as a mom, not who I am as a wife, but who I
Right.
am as Katie.
Right.
And so then knowing that, because again, my kids are going to leave or they're going to, even if they're at home, they're going to be more and more independent and not need me as much.
Right.
Then what do I do?
Hmm.
So it's reaching into that and pouring into that, not not dating myself, but investing in it the same way we tell couples to invest in each
Yeah.
other,
Hmm.
making sure that I'm spending time to prioritize investing in myself in a biblical way,
Hmm.
spending quiet time with the Lord, asking the Lord questions, not just about how I'm supposed to be a mom and a wife, but how am I supposed to just be a woman that loves the
Right.
Lord? And so in this season, it's also praying about how do you want me to impact my students or my coworkers or the neighbors across the street, people in my small group, or just what do you have for me right now? How do I find strength in you?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is a mistake that we do is when we define our worth based on what we see others around us doing, either in the workforce or staying at home or very involved in the squadron or not involved at all or having their own career, like all the different things. I mean, there's not just one answer.
Right.
There are many answers. And I think what's right for you is right for you and your family. And I, for me, what's right for us, it had to change frequently because we moved 14 times. So
Right.
it's always constantly just kind of reinventing what's going to work for this assignment. And that's one of the blessings I feel like of the military life, is that you really don't get routine, and you are readjusting, but what an opportunity to continue to explore and learn. I mean, I'm in a completely different season in my life now. And it's really fun. I actually really
Right.
like seeing us, just because I'm, for the first time in a long time, consider what are my goals and what do I feel the Lord calling me to do, that I don't have to take into consideration other people.
Mm-hmm.
So, Katie, I want to hear, what advice do you have for a military spouse who's struggling with believing the lie that she is not enough?
So,
And I know you've already said a lot of good wisdom for that too, if you just have
no,
to.
yeah. Well, I think like for that particular phrase, like I am not enough. It's funny. I had a colleague. So again, teaching very much like parenting and many other careers or places that the Lord may have us. It's almost like an empty pot. Like you can just keep pouring into it and pouring into it and pouring into it, and it's never going to be filled. Like I can give so much. I can just keep giving of myself. There's that Shel Silverstein book called The Giving Tree, which I've never been a fan of because it just seems like a very unhealthy way of giving yourself
Yes.
without any
Yeah.
sort of, safety. And this colleague was like, we're getting closer to the end of the year. She's like, I just don't know if it's enough. And I looked at her and I said, so I hope you understand when I say it's not. And so it's never going to be
That's
enough.
right.
And so as a wife, whether a military spouse or a civilian spouse or a single woman, a divorced woman, a single mom, like wherever we are, when I'm not enough, you're not. And that is why we need the Lord and his strength and his guidance and his perfect peace to guide us, because there's nothing we can do. There are not enough spouses clubs to join. There are not enough PTAs or cupcakes to make or books to read to make us enough.
Right.
We're not going to be enough. Otherwise, quite frankly, we wouldn't have needed Christ.
That's right.
And if if you're a believer, then that's a truth you have got to like root yourself in. Make sure that that is deeply planted, that I am not enough and that I'm not supposed to be, which
Absolutely.
is why I need Jesus. And if if somebody's listening or hears this and doesn't know Jesus, then it's important to know that that void of like, I'm not enough, I have to do more, I have to do more. That is a lie, because it is a race you will never find an ending to except through Jesus.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've got a blog post up on my blog about this, about just how we have to cement our identity in Christ and who he says we is. Not he is, he says we are.
Right.
Yeah, so, and I will put a link to that tomorrow. But yeah, just, I really, really appreciate this, Katie. I appreciate your honesty and, just how you're willing to be vulnerable with complete strangers on Instagram. But honestly, I appreciate you doing this for me, because you're such a dear
Always.
friend and I miss you.
I know, I miss you. That's one of the hardest things about seasons I have come to terms with, is just not having the same closeness,
Yeah.
physical closeness, and just of important, wonderful friendships. Because I do think as women, military spouses especially, these friendships are life-giving and
Absolutely.
so precious and important.
Yeah, and try to see the military venture as just an opportunity for all these wonderful friends you're going to make.
Yeah.
I mean, Katie and I are 10 years apart, and we probably likely would have never been friends had Laughlin Air Force Base not put us together.
Correct. Yeah.
But just absolutely adore you, and
I love
you're one of the
you
fastest
so much.
friendships I ever
I
made. We
know.
just kind of, we were both like, let's go deep
Yes,
fast.
exactly. And that's part of it. You got to sometimes.
Yes. So we'll appreciate you so much,
All
Katie. I
right.
know I want to let you get home,
Yeah.
but really, really appreciate you and miss you and love you.
Miss you and love you too. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay,
I
thank you
appreciated this
so much.
conversation.
Okay, thanks.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye.